Okay. So let me take the very extreme example of looking at Apple Computer, right? At least in the Steve Jobs era.
Mhm.
I have friends in Apple, and they're literally in little siloed buckets, and no one knows what each person's doing except for like maybe three people in the company when it all comes together. Um, but I think my theory there is that these people they were enamored, they were in love with Apple, they were in love with the company, and they saw the vision, and they were Apple employees, Applers.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so do you think that a startup, so most people that join a startup are pretty passionate about the vision of the startup, versus if you're in an enterprise, there's a little bit less of that. It's kind of like a paycheck. So would you draw a line or a potential distinction in the trustworthiness of employees when you look, looking at it in this kind of a spectrum, I guess?
Humans are humans, right? If you need to hire somebody into one of those positions with Apple, you actually answered your own question, right? It's got to be somebody who's passionate about the company, who really loves it, who's an Appler, right? So they'll naturally develop that mentality. And Apple has a strong vested commercial interest in enforcing these kinds of standards. It's just, how many apples do you know? I know one, right? So it's a unique work environment in that respect. But humans are humans everywhere. A startup, no matter how many patents it has, IP is not what it's protecting. What especially a technology startup is trying to do is get customers. And they will tell the customer anything the customer wants to know if it's the first enterprise logo that they're going to get, right? They'll open the kimono, they'll show them everything. Why? Because the business goal is to make that sale. And then you need to meet 2 or 3 more times, and now you have 2 or 3 or 4 logos from famous brands that are the early adopters, that are known to be the early adopters. You know this process, right? And then suddenly sale number 5 becomes easier. So as a security leader who has done this process literally dozens of times, I have built and run security programs in dozens of these technology organizations. Early on, my stance is almost outrageously loose, because I fully understand the goal of the company is to sell those first deals to the enterprise. I'm going to give them everything they need to make that sale. I'm not interested in finicky security controls. I'm interested in the big stuff, big picture things that provide reassurance, things that really help the sales team sell. And as the company grows, I become more conservative. And that makes sense. That aligns with how businesses should operate. If you tell me that it is the same picture in early stages and late stages, you're not understanding your job as a security leader, right? If a company is dealing with a recession, it has completely different goals. If it's protecting, than if it is in a growth environment or a greenfield environment, or if it's protecting market share. I mean, all of these things drive business decisions and therefore should drive security decisions, right? And that goes back, that kind of ties really big bow around this entire conversation and takes us back to the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah. Those of us that are entrepreneurs will relate to this, especially in a B2B context. I've received spreadsheets with 6 tabs, and each tab has 50, 100 rows, and asking me questions that I never, and let's just call a spade a spade. We're not really thinking through the answers to these questions. We're giving the answers that we kind of know will get us past. So what's the purpose behind such things at such a, is it going through a computer? Is it for compliance? Like, why do these things exist?
Why do some people walk around with special healing stones, right? Why do some people walk around with hats made out of foil, right? People who don't understand security will replace the process of security with processes that make them feel like they're in control of something. That is what the RFP process is. I have zero respect for it. It gains nothing for the customer. It gains nothing for the service provider. It provides nothing at all but an exercise in paper pushing. It has no security value, right? And I can go into a whole conversation as to prove that point, but that is my position. But it's because, again, if what you're steep in is security as technology, or if all you've learned is, through the process of audits, or if all you've done is, read some theoretical standard that comes from people that have never spent a day in the field, yet they design a standard that's supposed to be the holy grail of how security is supposed to be governed. I mean, you'll end up taking what you have, right? It gives you a certain set of tools, and you're going to use it, and you're going to spend a whole bunch of effort. You're going to hire people for it, and you're going to try to improve it and make it more efficient. You're going to fiddle at the edges. You're going to squeeze every little ounce of efficiency out of it when the process itself is faulty in the first place. If I fill a security questionnaire and I make a mistake and something goes wrong and you try to tie me to that mistake, I'm going to say, I made a mistake, or it was true the day that I filled it, or whatever, right? I mean, we did a best faith effort. A good commercial lawyer is never going to be able to enforce the fact that you gave a wrong answer. It's just never going to happen unless you can prove that it was an outright intentional lie. And you're never going to be able to prove that, right? At that point, it doesn't matter. It really has no implication. You are not doing anything for your company to force your poor vendors to go through this security questionnaires. You know what you're going to do with the vendors? You want to make sure you tie them down to a decent amount of damages through the commercial liability that you put in the contract, and just ask them for whatever SOC 2 report they can give you. Look, the job you do to audit them, the job that the auditor does to audit them is going to be roughly comparable. If they can produce one of those, then they've at least done some things, right? This entire process is completely dumb. Right. Like there's no benefit to it.
Yeah, yeah.